Hi guys, I hope you're having a good evening. I'm recording a very late video. I'm getting a couple of questions from you guys about the upcoming discussion board, and I wanted to just reach out quickly to all of you so everyone's approaching this on square footing. Um, when you're reading the instructions, it provides context for the discussion board, and then it has a discussion prompt at the very bottom where it says, consider the three audiences that you have to present your policy proposal to, and then respond to this question. And the question is, how will you vary your presentation style in each of those three presentations in order to persuade your particular audience? What I'd like for you guys to do is not worry so much about that text on the discussion board that says prompt. Kind of ignore that. I think it makes it far more confusing than it needs to be. What I would like for you guys to do is thinking about your policy proposal that you identified last week. Was that last week? I think it was. Time's getting away from me. As an aside, guys, I'm almost finished with your policy analysis papers. I'm going to be getting grades to you guys hopefully in the next 2 days, and then I'll try to quickly tackle your prior discussion post, so you'll be getting that shortly thereafter. I'm sorry, grading really adds up with you guys because I have to times everything by 25. Anyhow, thinking about your specific policy issue that you identified last week in the discussion post, or thinking about the policy proposal that you would have liked to identify. You might have thought about it since you posted it, and you're not really in favor of what you previously said. That's fine. You can take this a different direction. But thinking about what that last post asked you to do, identifying one particular policy for your social issue as a proposal, and then thinking about how you would try to persuade each of those three audiences, the first audience being your peers. So for example, somebody else who's enrolled in the same section or the same course, a different section in the online program with another instructor. So they might not necessarily be familiar with this specific policy issue because their course might have been structured in a slightly different way, but they're at the same level of learning as you. So thinking about your peers in the online program, how would you talk about your policy issue to them as your audience? How would you persuade them that they should support your particular policy proposal? Then thinking about an administrator or somebody working in an agency setting who has expertise in your particular policy area. How would you communicate or try to persuade that individual or an audience of those individuals in a way that's different than your peers? And then lastly, thinking about a community group, and this could really be anybody, but somebody who has ideological differences from you, and they're not inclined to support the particular policy that you're trying to persuade them to support. So thinking about how you would communicate differently for that audience relative to the other audiences we just talked about. And you can approach conveying this information to us in two different ways. I'm trying to add some clarity to this week. You may write in a statement, a written narrative statement about how you would kind of craft your message differently for each of these three audiences. Explaining how you would talk about your issue to a first audience, and then explaining to us how that would change for the second audience, and again how it would change for the third. And there's a 500-word minimum requirement on that approach for the narrative approach. Alternatively, you could create some type of table, whatever you deem as informative or useful to the reader, to differentiate the type of information you would present to each of these three audiences. So you'd have essentially a table for each of those three audiences and presenting different information around your particular policy issue for each of those three audiences. So in the table, you'd be organizing for the viewer how you would approach this differently. And you could write something in addition to that if you feel like the table is not enough. But all in all, those are the two options you have. And there's really no need to do much beyond that. Really, what I'm hoping to get a sense of in this post is you all understanding the nuances of communicating to different audiences and different approaches of persuasion that you would take with different people, depending on their background, depending on their existing level of knowledge, depending on whether or not they're inclined to agree with you. Knowing that somebody disagrees with you from the very beginning is helpful information, and it might instruct how you would approach them as you're talking about that issue, if that makes sense. All right, I'm hoping that this adds a little bit of clarity as to what you're doing this week. If not, please feel free to reach out. I'm here. I'll be trying to check my email frequently. All right, good luck.